So in my studies I realised that there's evidence that the Illuminati had been secretly taking control over education to try and manipulate it in some way.
Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Illuminati, was wrestling for control over public education.
Then I find evidence that there's Freemasons trying to remove religion from the schools as well, from education.
And 1700s Freemason wanted to exclude all priests and anything religious from the schools.
And then next we find Horace Mann was involved with trying to get rid of any kind of religious ideas out of the schools and to kind of move it towards a form of social efficiency, wasn't it?
Horace Mann, the founder of the public school, removed religious-oriented education to social efficiency.
You can see how they've been slowly moving the religious out of the schools, anything to do with Christianity out of the schools. Now we're going to start looking into evidence to support that there's a form of high-level Satanism in America and how it's secretly all over the world. The form of Baal worship done secretly. Practically that's what's going on. So we're looking at that now.
Benjamin Franklin was a Freemason and had been part of a group called the Hellfires Club, which involved human sacrifice, prostitution, while mocking traditional religion. There have also been charred bones of people under his house dating to his time period. According to George Washington, the doctrines of the Illuminati have reached the United States. We are going to pay attention to a secret location in California called the Bohemian Grove. At Bohemian Grove, presidents go there to make plans. There are also Druid-like rituals that take place there. They have an interesting symbol called the Owl of Minerva as a statue for their ritual. The Owl of Minerva is the main seal of the Illuminati. Albert Pike, a 33rd degree Freemason, says Lucifer is the good god and the god of the Christians is a bad god. Albert Pike's body is buried in this temple in Washington, D.C., with a bust of him there also. The street layout of Washington, D.C. is in the shape of a broken pentagram. This could be the satanic connections to Washington, D.C. If we look at a black magician, he tells us that the broken pentagram can mean the devil's footprints. The broken pentagram was used by an Illuminati member in a play to make a pact with the devil. After the play, the Washington, D.C. street design of a broken pentagram was put in place. The broken pentagram was familiar to those in secret orders, has been proven. This star is from Pythagoras, an ancient Greek philosopher. And of course we understand the Freemasons have an interest in Pythagoras. We learn that the pentagram can also mean the 5 chambers of hell and is seen as evil. Also, it is the house of Zeus in the underworld. Zeus is Baal and Baal is Satan. The Illuminati Lodge had a mural of the god Zeus on their ceiling.
Three years on, Bray did refuse to be interviewed and threatened legal action when asked to explain his part in the current promotion of Satanism. being filmed from the inside, gentlemen. If you look through there, there's a Sanyo video camera being aimed at us. We wanted to question Bray about his publication, The Lamp of Thoth, which has carried want ads for dead bodies, articles advocating sacrificial murder, and is the platform for Michael Aquino's new British recruiting drive. Bray called the police to hold us at bay, while he and his staff, in Halloween disguise, made their escape. Mr. Bray, we'd like to talk to you about the business you conduct and about the kinds of activities you promote. We'd like to talk to you about articles promoting murder, witchcraft, advertisements calling for dead bodies. There are many people who get into this disgusting business who wouldn't do so without you, Mr. Bray. What a pathetic display. Bray makes light of the dangers of Satanism, but some would say it is dangerous in any circumstances. One ex-Satanist now lectures nationally on what she calls the doorway to danger.
Maybe because you're curious. There may be some of you wondering what doorway to danger is all about.
Audrey Harper says she was once a prisoner of fear, a recruiting agent for a coven which practiced child abuse and human sacrifice.
I think it's a far bigger problem. I think we're only touching the tip of it. When you realise that all these places are self-governing, they can do what they like. They attract homosexuals, they attract lesbians, they attract paedophiles because they can get away with it. Because the covens are so secret, even the satanic temples are secret. They can shift around. If they think they've been run board, they just go to another building. So it is a big problem.
But are we talking about just a few people in isolated parts of the country?
No, we're not. We're talking, it is nationwide.
In a year-long investigation, we've catalogued more than a score of recent serious cases with clear evidence of satanic ritual, abuse, or crime. Some of the victims are being counselled by the Reverend Kevin Logan.
In counselling, I have seen some terrible practices. I've heard some really grueling, really nasty things that have happened to youngsters, to children at puberty, for instance. A girl having to have sex on the altar, the act of initiation into Satanism itself. Children having to eat feces and to drink blood. And stomach-churning, horrible things that these Satanists get up to. And the effect that this has on these young lives.
High priest
consecration with one who is now to be ordained.
David Austin, who's never been accused of any crime, is an ex-member of the National Front and now a chef.
His high priest upon earth, name you to our fellowship.
He's been a Satanist for 20 years and will now head the Temple of Set in Britain on behalf of the Aquinos.
And of beauty.
But in San Francisco, we discovered that Michael Aquino is not all he seems. For a start, he's a lieutenant colonel in the US Army and a specialist in psychological warfare, holding a top-secret military security clearance. Army investigators here at the Presidio base in San Francisco have now formally accused him of ritually abusing young children from the base's daycare center. Indeed, one young girl says she was horribly abused by both Michael and Lilith Aquino at their nearby home.
A U.S. Army chaplain made an accusation of child molestation centering on us at the Presidio of San Francisco at a time when my wife and I were living 3,000 miles away in Washington, D.C.
But we have a copy of the police report. The child appears to have identified you.
That's not true.
But as the police report shows, and the Aquinos know full well, the victim of that attack did identify them both as her abusers, to her parents, to her therapist, and to the army. Some of that ritualistic abuse is alleged to have taken place at the Aquinos' home at 2430 Leavenworth Street near the Presidio base. What's more, since that original disclosure, at least 5 other children have made identical allegations.
All I can say is that we have discussed this regularly with the CID, and we have not been told of a single other child that has made such a supposed identification at all.
Well, we've been told a couple of days ago that 5 more children have since disclosed. By this mother, that's who. Her children were amongst the 5.
They were taken to a daycare center where Michael Aquino and several other adults molested them. They did rituals. They wore robes. There was chanting. There were candles. He sodomized my children. He made them do all kinds of things, I guess. And they've also told the Army investigators that they'd been in his house, and they disclosed what the inside of his house looked like.
Those who investigate satanic crime can face frightening consequences. Lawyer Cynthia Angel tried to subpoena Michael Aquino for a child custody case after 2 more children alleged he'd abused them. Within days, she was kidnapped.
A stranger stepped into my car, pointed a gun at me, and told me to drive outside of town. I drove out of town, was shown a picture of a naked infant. I listened to a tape recording. There were infants crying, children crying, and adults chanting. The insinuation certainly was that these children and these adults were involved in some sort of satanic ritual. I was told repeatedly during this drive that should I tell anyone what I see or tell anyone what I hear or keep investigating the case that I had been investigating, that I would be killed.
What about the suggestion that this lawyer was taken out into the desert at gunpoint?
Well, that's asinine in a nutshell. We don't take any